Hold on to your butts.
Don't move, you're surrounded by armed bastards.
What are we going to do?
Well, I say let's get out there and twat it.
Hello, welcome back to the Cabin Night Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be returning a subject we've covered once already, and that is ghosts. But we're going to do something a little bit different this time, as it is a fan request. We'll call it a fan request. It makes us sound popular. But this is we had a competition actually on Twitter, and Kate Howard won, and she has requested that we do either a personal ghost stories episode, which we have already done, or read some stuff from like either creepypasta or Reddit or something like that. I've decided for this episode we're going to do a little bit of both, because there were some ghost stories that we ended up missing out on the last episode. So we'll do a bit of both, but before we do get onto that, I'd like to invite you to grab a drink, make yourself comfortable, and enjoy the discussion. Also, I'm Jake.
I think I'm James.
And I must be wrong.
Well, I'm glad we've got that one. We're changing things up at Cabin Night HQ.
I love it, because you didn't do it. Me and Roberts looked at you and went, huh? He's missed a bit.
What is happening?
He's changing the formula.
Yeah, I've got these wild ideas, right? If we want success on this podcast. So as I mentioned already, I want to start with maybe a quick top up on some of the personal experiences. I was going to include your story you told me the other day, Rob, but James has since debunked that one. So
Yeah.
I'll still tell it.
We'll tell it anyway.
Tell it anyway.
All right, okay.
And I won't tell the science behind it.
No, I think the science behind it is good, but it
It's sound science.
creeped me the fuck out at the time. So, locking up at work, and we have some ozone machines we put in certain rooms, which basically takes out all the oxygen, purifies it, and then puts it back in the room. So I put them in the lift, sent it up to the second floor, and went off to do my lockup. When I came back to the second floor, the lift was on the first floor. And I was like, there's nobody in this building, so why has the lift moved? And then I called it back up to the second floor, put the ozones in the room, carried on with my lockup, so the lift should have stayed on the second floor. When I came to lock up the doors at the end of the night, the lift had moved back to the first floor. Creeped me out.
Creepy.
Mentioned it to Jake. Jake was like, oh yeah, that sounds creepy. Mentioned it to James, and James said...
I talked to the engineer about this a few years ago, because it creeped me the fuck out as well when it happened to me. And for some bizarre reason, they've set the resting state for this lift on the first floor. Not the ground floor. They've set it on the first floor, and they've set it at a ridiculous timer as well, so it will just go back.
That's all well and good, James, but it doesn't explain the doors opening and the footsteps coming out of the lift as well.
I thought it was a ghost.
Ah, that's all right then. So that's kind of a bust in that respect. But so on the back of Rob's work-related one, and this is some months ago. This one happened to me quite. It was actually before lockdown. The building we work at, there's various alarm points which all need to be shut in order for us to be able to set the intruder alarm at the end of the night. And one of them is at the very top of the building, essentially. So you essentially have to make sure that that's shut before you leave, because you won't be able to set the alarm otherwise. Anyway, I checked on the panel and I saw that it was open. So I went up and shut it, and then did the rest of my lockup, got ready to leave. And as I was about to leave, it told me that point was open again. By this point, I'd switched all the lights off, so it was a case of, it could have easily switched all the lights back on. I did put some back on, but heading back through the building, knowing for a fact that I shut that door, and it's a relatively heavy door. It's a door, I don't know if you've noticed as well, that you have to pull it a little bit to make sure
It's
that...
false. You put some force behind it.
and you have to twist the handle as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't just shut by pulling it.
And it's one of them where I know I did it. I know I shut it. In that sort of job, you make sure you do it right, so you don't have to go back and do these sorts of things at 1 o'clock in the morning when you're already terrified. So yeah, that was a work related one for me. Who wants to go next? Because you've both highlighted.
Well, there's one I realised I forgot to mention last time. It's the only time that I felt something rather than seen something, which was quite a few years ago now. Me and Hayley were at Alton Towers.
Mm-hmm. It weren't you, were it?
No, it weren't me. I have told that story at Alton Towers before. And we were actually in the. It was we'd done a lot of the rides, so we went into the actual towers, and Hayley had a camera on her, because Hayley always has a camera on her. So we would go around the actual rooms of the towers, which if you've never done that when you go to one towers, they are lovely to go into. They're really, really nice. There's not a lot there, because it is literally just the bare bones and the brickwork, but it is still fascinating to just go and look at what was there, because they've got plaques of what they think the rooms used to be. And there was one room we went into, it was the old banqueting hall, so it was a huge cavernous open space that at that time just had glass in the end. You could see there was meant to be some sort of nice big ornate stained glass window that at that point it's now been replaced and they put it back in, but at that point it was just plain glass. And so we went in and we both just stood by the door, and Hay stood there taking a few pictures, and then we both left, and she went, and we both looked at each other and went, that's the only time I've ever felt it, but in that room we both felt like we weren't welcome. We both felt like there was something telling us to get out. We weren't welcome in that room. So we literally just opened the door, stood in, we both kind of felt the whole, oh, we're not meant to be in here. And it's weird, because when I thought back, because this was after I'd worked at Alton Towers, and when I was thinking back to when I worked there, in the maze that we were in, it was the room that, when I figured out where the route was, it was the room that nobody liked to work in. We decorated it and made it all look spooky and scary and stuff like that, which obviously led to something, but people just didn't like working in that room. There was just something about it. I think it's one of the few times that I've really felt an atmosphere in some way, going, yeah, you shouldn't be in this room, you shouldn't be doing this type thing, which, yeah, was quite creepy. And that's the only time I've ever really felt that. Yeah.
Mine is not a work-related one. Mine is a child-related one, and it is my child, my first child.
Children are terrifying anyway.
So, when Phoebe was born, she was always looking up to one corner of the room and chatting. I naturally put it down to it being, because there was no harm, there was no nothing. So I naturally put it down to it being my granddad, my grandma, my nan, and whatever. Just a family relative, Emma's grandparents, family relative had just come to say hello and check up on her. So at one point that creeped Emma out, and she actually said, whoever you are, thank you for coming to say hello, but please can you go now? And everything stopped, she stopped doing it. But at some point during that, Emma was putting her to bed. So in our house, there's you go up our stairs and turn back on yourself, and that's where Phoebe's bedroom was. She was in her cot, and Emma was trying to put her to sleep, and at that point she sat up, looked past Emma over her shoulder and waved to somebody, to which really did creep Emma out. And then she went to sleep and it was fine. We've never had anything since, but yeah, just that, it was the particular, her head went to the side as if she was looking past Emma, and she waved as if and it wasn't a baby wave of, just moving their arm. It was a distinctive wave.
Phoebe saw someone and waved at them.
Yeah. Phoebe was saying hello or goodbye to something.
Yeah, that's super. I remember Emma telling me that one years ago.
That is not a nice story.
Terrifying. I've got two more. One, a work-related one that happened very recently. Again, on the lock-up, I was just coming off the stage area, and as the door shut behind me, I heard some, and it was as clear as day, someone very distinctly say, "Hey." And it was a woman's voice, and it was it weren't a unpleasant sound, it was more of a trying to get my attention. Hey, like that. Yeah. So convinced was I that I'd heard this. I was actually on the phone to Becky at this point, and I went, fuck, did you hear that? And Becky had obviously not heard anything, but that's how convinced I were that I'd heard something directly behind me. And it was as if someone to the door I'd just come through, it was somebody had stuck their head out of that door and said, hey, as if to say, where are you going, or something like that. So that terrified me, as you can imagine. But the other one, it's not a story so much, because in that respect nothing spooky happened. But when I was 2007, so I was, how old was I in 2007? About 18, yeah, 18. No, it'd be longer ago than that. Yeah, maybe 17, 18 anyway. Me and my younger brother and my mum, we went to the Norton Aerodrome, which again, it's not far from here, from where we are now. And it's an old RAF airbase. It was where they stored and launched all the barrage balloons during the Blitz. That's That was the main sort of purpose of the base during World War II, anyway. And there's an old bunker there. There's old sheds, old buildings. It's all flattened now. It's all been took down. It serves a different purpose. I think it's they do truck, lorry, HGV driving tests and things like that.
I didn't know it had gone.
It's all been flattened now.
Yeah, it's Lightwood, isn't it? Now?
Lightwood, yeah.
Oh, I didn't realise it was the same place.
Lightwood, yeah, it's all the same spot. Anyway, so we decided, having watched a bunch of Most Haunted and Ghost shows and things like that, to take a camera, me, my brother, and my mum, and take a bunch of pictures, and nothing particularly spooky, like I say, happened at all. It was creepy to look at. It was only when we reviewed the pictures afterwards that we noticed anything even slightly unpleasant, and more peculiar in the picture I'm talking about, because it weren't until years later that I noticed this thing. We took some pictures down a long corridor, and they were like wispy bits of smoke and what have you that appeared to get closer and closer to camera with every picture we took. Started off with through the door at the end of the corridor, and it got closer and closer, which was a bit creepy. But there was nothing else, I would say, in any of the pictures that were like, oh, that could be something, or if it was only like potentially something. Whereas this picture I'm about to show you now, and when this episode released, I will share this picture as well. You must excuse the young me and my brother in the image, but that's the picture. And for reference there, I am showing the other two the picture right now. Can you see it? An eye, a nose, and a mouth.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I think.
It's something
Like
there.
it's almost like it's shouting or screaming.
Yeah.
Like,
Scratch mouth. You can't see this part of the face.
No.
You can only see.
Yeah, just kind of you zoom right in there. Just sort of go back to the sort of normal size photo. Just try and see. Can you see it?
I think you can see it there as well. I think it's probably more prominent zoomed out. But like I said, I will share this picture because and see what you think as well.
yeah, with that,
I
bit, it
didn't
looks
listen
like
to
it's
it.
something that's
moving.
moving.
And like I said, we'd reviewed them pictures afterwards and didn't see anything weird. And it's only years later. I think I might have even been living in London at the time when I saw that picture again. And I thought, what is that? Because that looks like there's a face right behind me. But yeah, like I say, I will share that picture just so there's a bit of context for that story. Like I say, it weren't a scary day as such, but looking back, it certainly gets the goosebumps on my arm. So yeah, that's is any more personal stuff?
No, I
There
don't think
probably is if I think about it, but we'll move on to the Reddit portion. So I've had a quick read through, and I found a selection of stories that I found creepy. So in the interest of fairness, we're all going to have a read of these. You all right with that?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Good.
Can't read, but yeah, I'll
That's
have a
fine.
go.
Well, I think I'll go first then. No, James, you're going first.
Okay.
You have a wonderful reading voice.
Well, thank you, dear.
And they'll freak you out more.
Oh, good. Good.
So there's no credit for this one. It's just one that was found on Reddit. So if you are listening, author of this story, thank you. It's a creepy little story.
Okay.
The story is called The Puppy in the Basement.
That sounds horrible. Mummy told me never to go into the basement, but I wanted to see what was making that noise. It kind of sounded like a puppy, and I wanted to see the puppy, so I opened the basement door and tiptoed down a bit. I didn't see a puppy, and then Mummy yanked me out of the basement and yelled at me. Mummy had never yelled at me before, and it made me sad and I cried. Then Mummy told me never to go into the basement again, and she gave me a cookie. That made me feel better. So I didn't ask her why the boy in the basement was making noises like a puppy, or why he had no hands or feet. Oh, that took such a dark turn quickly. Oh,
That's exactly the reaction I was expecting.
oh, that took such a horrible turn so quickly.
I could see James's face as you were reading it. The
Oh.
turn was coming down on
Oh,
his
that
face.
was horrible.
Okay, Rob, here you go. This is one that's that had just like the very reaction I was expecting.
Oh, that was horrible. That.
This next one Rob's going to read, and it's one that he knows the story already. It's a very popular one. It was put onto Reddit via BuzzFeed, and it tells the story of a father putting his young son to bed. Rob, it's a short one, just for you.
I begin tucking him into bed, and he tells me, "Daddy, check for monsters under my bed." I look underneath the bed for his amusement and see him, another him, under the bed, staring back at me, quivering and whispering, "Daddy, there's somebody in my bed."
I've heard that before. It's not pleasant, that one. Not pleasant.
Okay, I'm going to read one submitted to Reddit by Scoop Whoop, and it is called The Chair. When my sister Betsy and I were kids, our family lived for a while in a charming old farmhouse. We loved exploring its dusty corners and climbing the apple tree in the backyard. But our favourite thing was the ghost. We called her Mother, because she seemed so kind and nurturing. Some mornings, Betsy and I would wake up, and on each of our nightstands we'd find a cup that hadn't been there the night before. Mother had left them there, worried that we'd get thirsty during the night. She just wanted to take care of us. Among the home's original furnishings was an antique wooden chair which we kept against the back wall of the living room. Whenever we were preoccupied watching TV or playing a game, Mother would inch that chair forward, across the room towards us. Sometimes she'd manage to move it all the way to the centre of the room. We always felt sad putting it back against the wall. Mother just wanted to be near us. Years later, long after we'd moved out, I found an old newspaper article about the farmhouse's original occupant, a widow. She'd murdered her 2 children by giving them each a cup of poisoned milk before bed, then she hung herself. The article included a photo of the farmhouse's living room, with a woman's body hanging from a beam. Beneath her, knocked over, was the old wooden chair placed exactly in the centre of the room.
Ugh, that's unpleasant.
The next one, we're going to go back to James on this one. I don't actually recall this one, but again, it was submitted to Reddit via Reddit by BuzzFeed, and it is called The Ghost at Home.
Okay. Right. Last night, a friend rushed me out of the house to catch the opening act at a local bar's music night. After a few drinks, I realised my phone wasn't in my pocket. I checked the table we were sitting at, the bar, the bathrooms, and after no luck, I used my friend's phone to call mine. After 2 rings, someone answered, gave out a low, raspy giggle, and hung up. They didn't answer again. I eventually gave it up as a lost cause and headed home. I found my phone laying on my nightstand, right where I left it. Ooh.
Yes,
Ooh,
this is nicely creepy, that one, isn't
yeah.
it?
I mean, it's not quite no hands, no feet boy in the basement. Yeah.
Okay, so the final section of this first link is super short ghost stories. So the ones we've talked about before, 1 sentence ghost stories. So I'm going to read the first one, then Rob's going to read a couple of the others. This one doesn't have a name because it's just a sentence, and it goes like this. Mummy, the man at the top of the stairs says you should leave. Okay.
That's not a ghost story, that's just the husband.
The Real Hat Man, via Reddit.
I woke up to hear knocking on the glass. At first I thought it was the window, until I heard it come from the mirror again. Ooh. Who's that again?
I
thought it was a story then. Who's that again?
War Tom, the best. Via Reddit.
There's nothing like the laughter of a baby, unless it's at 1 a.m. and you're home alone. I do like them, the creepiness of them without actually saying anything really.
So I'm going to read this one. I've memorised it because it's my favourite, and it's only 1 sentence. So I'm not trying to big myself up. It's just 1 sentence. That's why I've memorised it. Yeah. It's about my level. And I remember when I first read it, I told Becky, and she really didn't like it because we will. I mean, I'll read this thing first, and I'll explain afterwards. So. You can look left and you can look right, but don't look up. She doesn't like it when you look up. And I remember telling Becky that when I went, right, look up, and she went, nope. Because we were living at Muswell Hill, we got really high ceilings, don't we? So.
Yeah, high rather than huge ceilings.
Yeah. So that's link 1. Do we want to go on and have some more?
Yeah, definitely.
They're all of a similar sort of length as well.
Mate.
Okay. This first one is called Mommy's Home. I heard one. A father is laying in bed after just waking up. He grabs a baby monitor and walks to his desk in his office at home. He has his baby on the baby monitor and hears his wife singing to her. He cracks a smile as he hears his wife singing, "Go to sleep, go to sleep," when suddenly the front door opens up and his wife comes in with the groceries.
I've still got a baby monitor at this moment in time, but it's still creepy.
Okay, so you got a title, this one?
Yeah, it's called Pretending to be asleep doesn't work.
A young boy sleeping in his bed on a usual night. He hears footsteps outside his door and peeks out of his eyes to see what is happening. His door swings open to quietly reveal a murderer carrying the corpses of his parents. Well, that changed quickly, didn't it? After silently propping them up on a chair, he writes something on the wall in blood of the dead bodies. He then hides under the child's bed. The child is scared beyond belief. He can't read the writing on the wall, and he knows the man is under his bed. Like any child, he pretends that he slept through the whole thing and hasn't woken yet. He lays still as the bodies, quietly hearing the breaths from under his bed. An hour passes, and his eyes are adjusting more and more to darkness. He tries to make out the words, but it's a struggle. He gasps when he finally makes out the sentence. I know you're awake. He feels something shift underneath his bed.
Nice. That's a funny one, Rob. You can read that one.
So this one is called 10. A man leaves his house every morning to walk to work and passes a mental hospital surrounded by a wooden fence. Every morning the patients are in the yard and he can hear them saying in unison 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. One day he gets curious, looks through a hole in the fence. Suddenly a stick shoots out and pokes him in the eye. Fuck, he says to himself. While walking away pissed off, he can hear the patient saying 11, 11, 11, 11, 11.
Not really a ghost story, but I like that one. Sorry, 10. Are they all Ty Dillinger fans? 10.
This one is called Yes. When I was a child, my family moved to a big old 2-floor house with big empty rooms and creaking floorboards. Both my parents worked, so I was often alone when I came home from school. One early evening when I came home, the house was still dark. I called out, Mum, and heard her sing-song voice say, Yes, from upstairs. I called her again as I climbed the stairs to see which room she was on, and again got the same yes reply. We were decorating at the time and I didn't know my way around a maze of rooms, but she was in one of the far ones, right down the hall. I felt uneasy, but I figured out that was only natural, so I rushed forward to see my mum, knowing that her presence would calm my fears, as a mother's presence usually does. Just as I reached for the handle of the door to let myself into the room, I heard the front door downstairs open and my mother call, Sweetie, are you home? In a cheery voice. I jumped back, startled, and ran down the stairs to her, but as I glanced back from the top of the stairs, the door to the room slowly opened a crack. For a brief moment, I saw something strange in there. I don't know what it was, but it was staring at me. This is basically the other one, isn't it, that I read?
Yeah.
It's Mom.
All I saw was red. I check into a small hotel a few kilometres from Kiev. It is late. I am tired. I tell woman at desk I want a room. She tells me room number and give key. It's written quite a staccato way, this one. But one more thing, comrade. There is one room without a number and always locked. Don't even peek in there. I take the key and go to the room to sleep. Night comes and I hear trickling of water. It comes from the room across. I cannot sleep, so I open the door. It is coming from the room with no number. I pound on the door. No response. I look in keyhole. I see nothing except red. Water still trickling. I go down to the front desk to complain. By the way, who is in that room? She looks at me and begins to tell the story. There was a woman in there, murdered by her husband. Skin's all white, except her eyes, which were red.
Ooh, quite good that actually. Looking back, that's what. Yeah. Quite like that one.
Solo camping trip. A woman survivalist and trained outdoors guide who loves to go solo camping. Returns home after 2 weeks of being in the bush and not seeing a single soul. Develops her disposable camera to find a roll of film with numerous pictures of her sleeping at night, on different nights. She has never gone camping or hiking since.
I always think it's weird that, like, if you were to wake up in the morning and find pictures of you and your wife in bed asleep, tucked that night, that'd just be one of the most terrifying things.
I've heard versions of that one before, yeah.
Oh, this is an interesting one. This isn't a story, it's called. I thought this was quite interesting. This is me. I'm here. I'm shifting the words that you're reading, altering them from whatever the person wrote. I've been here for a while, for as long as you can remember anyway. Sometimes I say your name as you're falling asleep, or whisper urgently in your ear. Do you remember the time that I screamed, throwing panic through you and setting your heart racing? That was fun. You're wondering who I am. That's only natural. But of course you already know. I'm you. But I'm the real you. I'm the mind that existed here before you stole my body, before you forgot about being a parasite. I'm the child who looked the wrong way, asked the wrong question, saw the wrong thing. But I'm not so little anymore. You may have forgotten me, but I'm still here. I've always been here, and I'm going to get out.
Well, that was different.
That's why I liked it, 'cause it was a bit different from your typical sort of story thing. So there's one more link. 30 very short tales of horror. They're sort of like the one sentence type ones.
This New Old House by Battle of Hell 821. We bought an old house, my boyfriend and I. He's in charge of the new construction, converting the kitchen into the master bedroom, for instance. While I'm on the wallpaper removal duty, the previous owner had papered everything. Wall, ceiling, everything. Removing it is brutal, but oddly satisfying. The best feeling is getting a long peel, similar to your skin when you're peeling from sunburn. I'm not supposed to be laughing at this, but it's quite funny. I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of... but I kind of make a game of peeling, on the hunt for the longest piece before it rips. Under the corner, a section of paper in every room, a person's name and date. Curiosity got the best of me one night, and when I googled one of the names, I discovered that person was actually a missing person. The missing date matched the date under the wallpaper. The next day, I made a list of all the names and dates. Sure enough, each name was for a missing person with dates to match. We notified the police, who naturally sent out the crime scene team. I overheard one text saying...
CSI Loxley.
Yup, it's human. Human? What's human? Ma'am, there is material you removed from the walls already. This isn't wallpaper you're removing.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's grim. What's this? It's like peeling skin. This is called I Hate It When My Brother Charlie Has to Go Away by Horror in Pure Form. I hate it when my brother Charlie has to go away. My parents constantly try to explain to me how sick he is, but I am lucky for having a brain where all the chemicals flow properly to their destinations like undammed rivers. When I complain about how bored I am without a little brother to play with, they try to make me feel bad by pointing out that his boredom is likely far surpasses mine, considering he's confined to a dark room in an institution. I always beg for them to give him one last chance. Of course they did at first. Charlie's been back home several times, each shorter in duration than the last. Every time, without fail, it all starts again. The neighbourhood cats with gouged out eyes showing up in my toy chest. My dad's razors found dropped on the baby slide in the park across the street. Mum's vitamins replaced with a bit of dishwasher tablets. My parents are hesitant now, using last chances sparingly. They say his disorder makes him charming, makes it easy for him to fake normalcy, and to trick the doctors who care for him into thinking he's ready for rehabilitation. That I'll just have to put up with my boredom if it means staying safe from him. I hate it when Charlie has to go away. It makes me have to pretend to be good until he is back.
It's not where I thought that was going.
No, I thought pretty quickly that's where that one was going.
I thought that was going down. He's the kid in the institution and Charlie's the imaginary friend. The imaginary brother. Being an interesting twist. This one is called Guardians by Dark Alligator. He awoke to the huge insect-like creatures looming over his bed and screamed his lungs out. They hastily left the room and he stayed up all night, shaking and wondering if it had all been a dream. The next morning there was a tap on the door. Gathering his courage, he opened to see one of them gently place a plate filled with fried breakfast on the floor, then retreat to a safe distance. Bewildered, he accepted the gift. The creatures chittered excitedly. This happened every day for weeks. At first he was worried they were fattening him up, but after a particularly greasy breakfast left him clutching his chest from heartburn, they were replaced with fresh fruit. As well as cooking, they poured hot, steamy baths for him and even tucked him in when he went to bed. It was bizarre. One night he woke to gunshots and screaming. He raced downstairs to find a decapitated burglar being devoured by the insects. He was sickened, but disposed of the remains as best he could. He knew they had just been protecting him. One morning the creatures wouldn't let him leave his room. He lay down, confused but trusting as they ushered him back into bed. Whatever their motives, they weren't going to hurt him. Hours later, a burning pain spread through his body. It felt like his stomach was filled with razor wire. The insects chittered as he spasmed and moaned. It was only when he felt the terrible squirming feeling beneath his skin that he realised the insects hadn't been protecting him. They had been protecting their young. That was pretty obvious where that one was going. Seeing Red. Sorry, Rob.
See, red. Haven't we just?
First Day of School
Oh no, it's a different one. I thought it was like the red.
by
one.
Zenri Harper. Everyone loves the first day of school, right? New year, new classes, new friends. It's a day full of potential and hope, before all the dreary depressions of reality show up to ruin all the fun. I like the first day of school for a different reason though. You see, I have a sort of power. When I look at people, I can sense a sort of aura around them. A coloured outline based on how long that person has to live. Most everyone I meet around my age is surrounded by a solid green hue, which means they have plenty of time left. A fair amount of them have a yellow-orangish tinge around their auras, which tends to mean a car crash or some other tragedy. Anything that takes people before their time, as I say. The real fun was when the auras ventured into red end of the spectrum. Every now and again I'll see somebody who's basically a walking stoplight. Those are the ones who get murdered or kill themselves. It's such a rush to see them and know their time is numbered. With that in mind, I always get to class very early so I can scout out my classmates' fates. The first kid who walked in the class was basically radiating red. I chuckled to myself, too damn bad, bro. But as people kept walking in, they all had the same intense glow. And finally I caught a glimpse of my rose-tinted reflection in the window. But I was too stunned to move. Our professor stepped in, locked the door. His aura was a sickening shade of green.
Wow. Well, it took a turn, didn't it? I reckon we go one more each.
Yep. Yeah, that's how we're doing it.
It's you then, James.
Okay. They got the definition wrong by Louis? Him. Yeah. Or her, yeah. Whoever this may be. It has been said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. I understand the sentiment behind the saying, but it's wrong. I entered the building on a bet. I was strapped for cash and didn't buy into the old legends of the hotel to begin with, so $50 was more than enough to just get me to do it. It was simple. Reach the top floor, 45th floor, shine my flashlight from a window. The hotel was old and broken, including the elevator, so that meant hiking up the stairs. So up the stairs I went. As I reached each platform, I noted the old brass plaques displaying the floor numbers. 15, 16, 17, 18. I felt a little tired as I crept higher, but so far, no ghosts, no cannibals, no demons. Piece of cake. I can't tell you how happy I was as I entered the last stretch of numbers. I joyfully counted them aloud at each platform. 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 44. I stopped and looked back down the stairs. I must have miscounted, so I continued up. 44. One more flight. 44. And then down 10 flights. 44. 15 flights. 44. And so it's been for as long as I can remember. So really, insanity isn't doing something repeatedly and expecting different results. It's knowing that the results will never ever change. That each door leads to the same staircase. It's the same number. It's realising you no longer fall asleep. It's not knowing whether you've been running for days or weeks or years. It's when the sobbing slowly turns into laughter.
Oh. Okay. This one's called My Daughter Learned to Count by Real Science 87. My daughter woke me around 11:50 last night. My wife and I picked her up from her friend Sally's birthday party, brought her home and put her to bed. My wife went into the bedroom to read while I fell asleep watching the Braves game. Daddy, she whispered, tugging at my shirt sleeve, guess how old I'm going to be next month? I don't know, Beauty, I said as I slipped on my glasses. How old? She smiled and held up 4 fingers. It's 7:30 now. My wife and I have been up with her for almost 8 hours. She still refuses to tell us where she got them.
Oh, no, good. Well, that's not how I expected that one to end.
It just come really quickly.
Got a very Monty Python that in.
Really quickly to an end of that one.
Oh, okay.
Creepy, but I like it.
This next one's going to be our last story, read by Robert.
Perfect Plan by Hunt Frog. On Monday, I came up with the perfect plan. No one even knew we were friends. On Tuesday, he stole the gun from his dad. On Wednesday, we decided to make our move during the following day's pep rally. On Thursday, while the entire school was in the gym, we just waited outside the doors. I was to use the gun on whoever walked out first. Then he would take the gun and go into the gym blasting. I walked up to Mr. Quinn, the guidance counsellor, and shot him in the face 3 times. He fell back into the gym, dead. The shots were deafening. We heard the screams in the auditorium. No one could see us yet. I handed him the gun and whispered, "Your turn." He ran into the gym and started firing. I followed a moment after. He hadn't hit anyone yet. The kids were scrambling and hiding. It was mayhem. I ran up behind him and tackled him. We struggled. I wrenched the gun out of his hands, turned it on him, and killed him. I closed his mouth forever. On Friday, I was anointed a hero. Indeed, it was the perfect plan.
Oh.
Okay.
I wonder where that one was going. I'm trying to figure out where that one was going.
It's not a ghost story as such. It's
No.
It's just horrible.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty more to go at. I think I've quite enjoyed reading some of these. Some of them have been.
I enjoyed the more ghosty ones.
Yeah. Although the funny one with the fingers and the 10.
Yeah, oh good. Yeah, that was quite. Yeah,
None of them quite match up to the puppy in the basement though.
the very first
James's
one.
reaction.
The very first one.
This entire episode was worth it. That was for you, Kate. It's completely worth it just for your reaction there. I think that just about covers it, doesn't it? So one thing left to say: you've been great. We've been Cabin Night. Good night.